We all have that one coworker, right? You know, the one that you just want to... Hello and welcome, my little blue agents of chaos. Now, way back when, 23 years ago, in the year of our Lord, 2002,
I don't like how time works. It certainly does seem to keep marching on.
Lilo and Stitch was a surprising but beautiful little story about finding your place in the world, dealing with loss, friendship, and most importantly, it was a story about family. And even if yours looks a little different, a little broken, it's still good. This is starting to look a little familiar. And with that said, today we will be making our modern day ugly duckling, Stitch. As Experiment 626 is indestructible, I think it's safe to assume that he has a belly made entirely of space aluminium. I'll base the aluminium in a base layer of clay and make a general pear shape for our chunky boy. To stiffen the legs, I'll double helix them in my trusty drill and bend them into position into their standing pose. I can then carve out a section in the base of the body to insert said legs and add a little superglue to fix the steel to the underlying foil before placing back in a precarious position.
Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls.
I'll then plug the hole and relocate the body to a mounting block currently housing the old bones of my undersized Sonic and Shadow. I'll drill in a larger hole and not for the first time in my life become overzealous and drill a bit deeper than I should have.
What did he say?
Get your mind out of the gutter. To save on time, at this point I strongly considered making Humpty Dumpty, but last I checked, he hasn't got a movie coming out next week, so that shilly boy will have to wait. That said, the egg shape is a fine place to start, but I'll need to shave and shape my entire body first and then come back to Stitch and give him a similar treatment. I can then add a proxy head within which I'll add a couple of eyes, a nose, and in no way horrifying mouth.
I want to play a game.
And now with the guarantee of heavy, vapid eye contact in place, we can get onto some furry business. Now, if any of you are familiar with a certain Canadian goat, then you may be familiar with the patent-pending 3-step inferring process. We'll be doing that here, but on a much smaller scale. We'll begin with a cap-off marker that I can roll haphazardly around the soft surface, leaving me with a lot of random sweeping fur arches. The body can then get a rub down with some isopropyl alcohol with a soft and a stiff brush, and we can place that aside for a bake and move on to the head. Stitch's proportionately impossible head starts as a little ball of clay with a flattened base that we can base in some bacon bond and wrap in an initial layer of clay. I can form fit onto the body and conduct a size check and begin to refine accordingly. And hey, if you're one of the 80% of my viewers that are not yet subscribed, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. Like, share, comment. Let me know if you were around for the original Lilo and Stitch. How do you feel about Disney remakes? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you think they're creatively bankrupt? Or do you think they should just keep making more of them? Love to hear from you, but for now, get back to the video. I'm happy with all that, so we can now make a series of eyeballs out of black Primo. I'll chop these in half so they have a flat side for easier placement, and we can go ahead and position in the sockets. The reason for the deviation here from the normal eyeball insertion was that the flat edge will just sit against the foil smoother than if it was a complete bean. I'll be using a thin sheet of red clay for the mouth to avoid painting later. I can ram this down his throat and with an X-Acto blade, trim away the excess before adding some much needed eyebrows. To give the face some expression, I'll be adding a series of noodly doodads where I think a brow might furrow and a lip might curl upward. I'll then take my largest and my stiffest silicone shaper to blend in the skin folds. I can then fill in the remainder of the gum up to the lip, shape the eyelids a wee bit before realizing that I have made a perfect Emperor Krulos by accident. Next up, Stitch needs his little chompers, so I've made a series of little white teeth off camera and pre-bake them for easy insertion into some soft gums. With the teeth in place, I can place a comically oversized doggo nose where the nose would go, and now we're starting to see our lovable little monster come through. But as we all know, no doggo nose is a smooth nose, and so I will pop this off his face, and with a small texture roller that I usually use for scales, I'll roll this back and forth over the nose to give us just that little nice bumpy texture. I can then add a sandwich bag over the top and mark in the fulcrum, which is the delineating center line of the nose, and a couple of nostrils. Now on to making this head a little furry. This process varies ever so slightly from the body, as I've added smaller hairs around the eyes, nose and mouth with a little pointy doodad. I can then add a little texture to the lips via sharp silicone shaper, and with that, the head is almost ready for a bake. We just need to stab it a few times for future antenna and ear armature while soft. Now we've got a lot of clutter going on here, so it is very important to keep your desk clutter free, because as we know, a cluttered desk is a cluttered mind, and once that's tidied, we can get onto some ears. For the ears, we'll begin with an ear shape template, then cut out the ears roughly the same size and shape. We'll need 4 of these, as we will be dealing with the front and the back. I'll use the old double helix wire approach, and I will stab them into the previously made holes in the side and the top of the head. I'll add a little bit of super glue, trim down the armature wire, and add some bacon bond to sandwich the ear pieces together. With the ears where they should be and listening intently, I can texture up the inside of the ears with a variety of ball styluses, and then I'll use a little wire cutters to add stitches, trademark ear clippings. I can then give the same ball stylus and ear clipping treatment to the left ear before flipping them over and giving them the old furry process. And that's our head done, and we can move on to giving Stitch something to stand on. To make the feet, I'll roll out a single sphere of clay and try split it down the center to ensure an equal sizing. I'll press them into the mat using my large ball stylus to impress in a divot in which I can dock the legs later. The feet then receive the same texture treatment, and I can poke in a series of holes to receive some pre-baked claws. And with that, we have a couple of bear slippers that we can insert the pre-baked legs into. With a little bit of blending, we can blend the feet into the body, bake the lot again, and mark out some points on the body to drill holes for arms. In an effort to get the arm armature fitting as snugly as possible, I'll size it against a drill bit until the diameters are close enough. I'll drill in the aforementioned holes, vacuum up the mess, and tread through the aluminium wire. Tread through, how now, brown cow. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, a peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Now with that segue firmly out of the way, next up is to get down a layer of bacon bond and lay down an initial base layer of clay before beefing up the forearms, Popeye style, and smoothing and shaping the arms before once again adding in the fur, which is testing my tolerance for tedium, but then we can make some weapons. The plan here is to make 2 blasters and a fire staff. The blasters begin as a little egg that I'll chop a section out of for the handle. I'll then add a red strip to the top and the buttons to the side. And yes, I know the red part is recessed, but for artistic and skill level reasons, I'll lay a sheet on top. I can use a stylus to emboss the buttons and score in some horizontal details to the top sheet. In an ill-guided and misjudged attempt to add detail, I accidentally gave the gun a face and now I can't unsee it. So I smushed it up and reverted to a more simplistic, cartoon-accurate design. And I think the less is more approach worked out a treat. For the fire staff, I'll roll out a thin piece of clay and wrap it around a thin wooden dowel. I can roll the soft clay around the edge of my scale rule to impress in a wrapped fabric appearance, and to add the fire on the ends. I'm trying something that I've not tried before. Hot glue. And this was more finicky than I had anticipated, and I found that the best way to do it was to apply it in multiple layers, allowing each layer to harden before applying the next. And this, of course, being me, was rendered completely redundant almost immediately, as I realized I still have to bake a hand directly onto the staff, and between us pros, hot glue melts in the oven. With the weapons baked, we need to make some hands with a couple of opposable thumbs and an itchy trigger finger to wield them. Now, when I polled my audience and they voted strongly in favor of this version of Stitch, I thought, great, not a lot of extra painting. What I didn't factor in were the 4 arms, because 4 arms means 4 hands, and 4 hands means 16 fingers, which is about 11 more fingers than I like to make on any given model. With that said, I'm going to take some artistic license with the hand design in order for Stitch to hold onto his weapons, because I think that cartoon is lying about the physics. I can also add some knuckles to the back of the hand, refine the shape, and do this 4 times before assembly. Here we can see the little hand on the little staff. Isn't it cute? Now, the hands were more than a little bit of a nuisance to attach to the body with the weight of the blasters, so I opted to add some starter rods down the forearm, much like you would do with a concrete foundation, and B, I opted to remove the blasters for the bake and hope that when I put them back into the hands later, they didn't look like total crap. Lucky for me, they actually look pretty good, they fit pretty well, and it'll make it easier to paint down the line. Winning. With the body having had its final bake, I can redo the hot glue fire to the staff, making sure to hold it in such a way that the flames are rising upward, as fire cannot travel down, don't you know. I can then glue his head onto his shoulders, making sure he's looking in the direction of his blaster, then add said blaster, and with that, our blue boy is a grey boy, ready to be primed white. And here we can have a quick look at the sculpt before we get on to the painting. And as with all my paint jobs, it's time to destroy a model. This is masking fluid. I tried it for the first time on this model and it is a strong contender with glitter for being the herpes of the arts and crafts world. I've never used this product before and I thought it would be a great tool to mask off colored clay, which it did, but man, it was hard to get off. Just got stuck in all those little nooks and crannies. So I turned to a little bit of blue tack and my old friend masking tape. This is obviously not blue. Now ideally I would have had some blue contrast paint, but I did not. And that coupled with my lack of patience and devil-may-care attitude, my monkey brain thought it a stellar idea to paint Stitch green in hope that I could dry brush over it with some blue whilst retaining some of that lovely shading. Spoilers, I could not. So I'm gonna have to try and fix that a little bit later. In the interim, I'll paint on Stitch's lighter belly tones before making a primer for the rest of his fur with a combination of black, blue, flow improver, and some water. I'm much happier with this base coat now, so I'll leave that to dry overnight and I will paint the ears in their requisite pink. I can tidy up the edges with the blue before moving on to the weapons and painting them in their traditional yellow, whilst giving the top its red trim and the barrel its red trim. It's at this stage of the project that I decided I wanted to add Stitch's dorsal fins or dorsal fingers. It's not that I forgot. No one forgot anything here. Maybe you forgot. Did you ever think about that? I remembered. This was the plan all along. And that's why I'm making it out of milliput. Because I don't want to put my oven back on again. Do you know how much electricity costs? It's like a lot. On a scale of 1 to Elon, does anybody out there believe me yet? Okay, so it is the next day and I have acquired 3 cheapest chips paints for dry brushing. Why 3? Because I didn't want to have to Google Stitch images in the middle of an art shop, so I bought all the blue they had. And my partner says that I make poor financial decisions. This is an investment in future crafting projects. That said, I'll do some color blending with a white acrylic and my chosen blue until I get a color that satisfies me greatly, and I'll dry brush lightly over all the raised areas of the fur, trying my best to retain the shading that has already been applied. His back fingers can then get their light strip. Once that's dried, I can add on the near black tip and with a very thin leather brown wash, I'll paint the fabric on the bow staff that I can only assume he stole from David. The ears were looking a little bit too vibrant for my liking, so I toned them back with a pink-white dry brush, and then I add the darker back pattern between the back fingers. And with all that done, I feel safe in removing the masks, which was kinda like going to a baby's first birthday party. It lasts a lot longer than it should, nobody really wants to be there, and by the end you'll wonder if you'll ever get that time back. No, you won't. We shall struggle on regardless with a toothpick and paint touch-ups. I can use a torn-up makeup sponge on my trusty reverse tweezers to apply the lighter tones around the eyes and use a brush for the areas the sponge cannot reach. And then I can touch up all the black areas in the eyes and the nose where there was overflows of blues. Now I did want the blasters to have a shine, so I'll whip out my high gloss varnish and give them a once over. I'll do the same to the feet and the hand claws, the eyes, the nose and the mouth, then mount stitch into an MDF block with a little sandcastle I made off screen out of some XPS foam. It's really just 5 little cubes glued together. Now if you've seen the 2002 original, or indeed heard of a little island called Hawaii, then I shouldn't have to explain to you that this will be a sandy base. I'll lay down a thick layer of Mod Podge and cover the entire base in sand. I can fix the sand in place with some woodland scenic cement, and then I can come back and paint the flames on the bow staff. I'll start with a base layer of orange, working my way up to a lighter yellow, because the hotter the flame, the lighter the colour. And finally, we can give the castle a flag, give the eyes a coating in UV resin to make them really shine, and I think we are all good here. And onto those Ohana images. As always, a big old thank you for stopping by today, and a bigger thank you if you actually made it this far. Do feel free to leave a comment, always love hearing from you reckless vagabonds. Do like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and until next time, go make a mess.